How do you become emotionally available so you can break the cycle of having unhealthy relationships and finally stop attracting emotionally unavailable people? There is only one skill that you need to rewire your unavailability so you can be open to healthy, secure love. Like my client Penny, who herself is a therapist, and despite having all of the therapy tools in her toolkit, was still trauma bonding with emotionally unavailable men and just couldn't shift her ingrained self-abandonment patterns. After learning this one skill, Penny has never felt so empowered in her body and sense of self and has completely moved on from the exes of her past. Now, when you are emotionally unavailable, you have trust issues, you need to numb a lot and spend time in fantasy thinking, and you never feel enough in life and in relationships. And you're always in this caretaking, rescuing, or fixer role in relationship. And you're hyper independent, you're a perfectionist, you've probably got a really strong inner critic. And the biggest sign is that you keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners. Now, the definition of emotionally unavailable is that you're not available and connected to your own emotional experience. And this comes from learning to disconnect or distort your emotional experience as a child because you were raised by emotionally negligent, inconsistent, or unpredictable caregivers, and you really had to focus on their emotional experience rather than have time to focus on what was going on for you. Now, the skill that turns this around is self-attunement. Self-attunement is a process of reconnecting with your emotions, particularly your emotional, energetic, and physical experience in the body in real time, moment by moment, not just when you're triggered, but this is where you're bringing your self-experience along every day in every moment, rather than shutting or denying parts of yourself, which you do subconsciously when they arise. Now, this is the definition of whole, right? When you're self-attuned to all of your parts. We know this term holistic. This is what being holistic within yourself is all about. Now, the reason you don't naturally self-attune is because you have difficulty fully engaging in your emotional experience and your relationships. And that's because your capacity to feel emotions more broadly is limited at the moment. You've learned automatic behaviors to engage with yourself and others to stay safe. And you're numbing and overeating and checking out and doing fantasy thinking, and your nervous system and your body is just not regulated, right? You're in this hyper-aroused stress state, or you're shut down. Now, what's going on is that there are these protector parts inside of you working overtime. So if you're aware of the internal family systems model and you're aware of the protector model, these parts can work overtime to keep parts of us locked away because they don't believe that we can fully experience them in a safe way. For example, your inner critic might be very loud, your perfectionist or your hyper independent part might just think that chaos will completely ensue if that part isn't working hard to keep all of those emotions at bay. It thinks that you're just going to fall apart. Now, these parts think that emotions are unsafe. Your inner critic, that inner perfectionist, thinks that feeling emotions is an unsafe thing to do because you weren't brought up in a household where it was safe to feel emotions. You didn't have healthy emotional regulation modeled by parents, right? Emotions were the enemy, and likely you had to tiptoe a lot around your parents because they were bottling up these emotions and they could kind of explode at any moment. So the parts inside of you are acting like an army to keep you safe from these emotions that you naturally have inside. We all have emotions. So it's really important to learn this self-attunement skill. So the way that you learn how to self-attune is quite simple to explain, but it does take practice and slowing down and really just listening to your body and being patient with yourself where you are right now. What we're doing is we're teaching ourselves a skill to really turn around what we're doing at the moment, which is ignoring or denying emotions and parts within us. And just like a big ship at sea, it's going to take a really long time for that ship to do like a 180. So really expect it to take time for you while you do this. Allow yourself the time and all the mistakes that you'll make where you'll keep shutting yourself down, and eventually your body will learn that it is safe to do this now because you're in an adult body and you do have the physical capacity to feel emotions. So It's going to take time also to convince your internal parts that it's safe to do so, right? In the IFS model, we're really aware that those protector parts have a really important role and they need to feel seen, heard, and validated and loved. And it does take time for them to kind of get on board with this new way of doing things. There is a hierarchy of self-attunement, all right? And this is kind of the steps that you're going to go through and what you'll prioritize when you learn self-attunement. The first one is awareness. The second one is language, how you express what your emotion is. And the third one is soma. And soma means body, which is your body's experience of your emotion or whatever's going on for you at that moment. So the priority is to begin with awareness of your internal experience and use that to then develop a language to name your feelings in that moment. So you kind of use that clue of the language of the emotion. It might be quite basic at this moment, sad or uncertain or fearful. And you use that language to then identify your somatic experience. So what's going on in the body? Where are you feeling that emotion? And you can sometimes tap into the body's experience first. Like, say, for example, you might get a really strong pain or sensation when you're in the presence of someone or when you visit a certain place or have a certain memory. And pain is very strong and it can cut through your awareness before you even realize it, before you can even put language to it. Your body is having this experience. So you can tap into the body and find out what that is all about. So say, for instance, you experience the pain and you stay with the pain and you see what that opens up emotionally for you, whether it is some kind of emotion or memory, and language can then be attached to it. And that's when the awareness can come. So we can come through the body as well, but it's good to start with awareness. But from what I've seen time and time again with my clients in Heal Your Heart School is that there is a real resistance to doing this work because there's an internal part within you that believes it's safer to disconnect or disassociate rather than feel the emotion. And you may not have the internal capacity to self-attune immediately because you didn't learn this skill, it's all new. And because your body might be stuck in a stress response, and so your capacity, your window of tolerance might be quite limited. If that's the case, you really need to first practice self-regulation. This is a nervous system practice where you bring your body into a more relaxed state. The whole purpose of it is not to uncover any emotions or do any digging work. It's simply just to feel safe in your body, probably for the first time in your life, right? Emotionally unavailable people tend to have a nervous system that is switched or stuck on or dysregulated all the time in fight or flight or freeze. Instead of having a healthy flow between a stressed and unstressed state, which is a natural process for human beings, you're actually stuck on in stress, which means your cortisol and stress levels are high. You might be waking up in the middle of the night. You might be noticing other stress symptoms are coming up physically for you in your body as well. Now, like any skill, like learning to ride a bike, you can train your nervous system to down-regulate by using self-soothing skills like holding yourself, giving yourself a self-hug, your head, or any pranayama or breath work, any activity that relaxes you and your body and quietens your mind that you naturally do anyway. Do that daily just for 5 minutes. And again, this is a very slow turnaround of a big ship, so be patient. Eventually, you're going to come into attunement with your nervous system and know more intimately the signs when you're dysregulated or stuck in stress. Or when you're relaxed, you'll know how to deepen into an even more relaxed state. This is a really important skill to set yourself up for the self-attunement practice. And it really aids self-attunement because it enables our experience of emotions whilst being more safe. There's less need for the inner protectors and inner critic to jump in and save or dissociate. Now, within the hierarchy of attunement, the soma or the body experience is the largest and most comprehensive because there is a large non-verbal part of you energetically where most of your trauma is actually held. And this is the reason why talk therapy or top-down therapy only scratches at the surface because a lot of your trauma is trapped in your body, and that's where most of the potential for your healing actually exists. So how do you bring self-attunement into your daily life? It can be a cumbersome process at first because you are effectively learning a new skill, and you're learning the emotional landscape of your body. So you need to treat it like any new skill. Practice short and often. Set maybe 3 alarms on your phone per day to check in with your body and your emotions. Perhaps habit stack. So when you brush your teeth, you spend time becoming aware and noticing if you can put language to your emotions and seeing if you can find it then in your soma, in your body. Now, there is a rule that I teach on this channel that can be really helpful for this self-attunement skill as well. And if you know this channel well, you know that the 50-50 rule is a boundary tool that I teach between you and other people, but it's also a very useful attunement tool as well. So when you're going about your daily life, just imagine that you usually have 100% of your awareness on your external world, right? That's just the way we're used to being. You're shopping, you're at work, you're in conversation with someone. It can be sometimes like you don't exist, right? You've just got all of your focus on the outside world. I want you to try and give yourself at least 10% of your awareness whilst you're going on about your daily activities. So 10% of that, you're focusing on how you're feeling in that moment, how your breath is, your emotions, if there's anything that's coming up for you, or just the thoughts that are going on in your mind while you are speaking with that person or doing that task. And just do that for a moment. You don't need to do it all the time. Just challenge yourself to see if you can just do it a couple of times and then build up that 10% to 20%. And eventually get to 50%. 50% is a really great balance to learn self-attunement because it allows us to be engaged and connected in the world whilst also being really connected to ourselves and our own experience. And it can inform so much of how we go about our daily life. Now, I really encourage you to find friends where you can achieve that 50%. You know, some friendships I can't, some friendships I do have where there's this real sense of emotional safety where, you know, depending on the dynamic that we have at that time, they're providing a lot of space for me in that moment to connect to myself as well as to them. So just choose someone that you connect well with and you know that they're not draining your energy, and maybe just organize to have a quiet cup of tea with them and practice your 50% attunement while you're with them. Even you might tell them about it, you know, ask them to ask you certain questions so that you can practice self-attuning whilst in the company of someone else, which can be a really powerful skill to do, because if you've always, you know, self-abandoned, if you've always kind of been in relationships where the other person is more important than you, the presence of someone else in your life can cause you to just totally self-abandon. So getting them to set that up for you, set you up for success, can be really beneficial. And you might return the favor, you know, spend some time with you focusing on them, self-attuning to their 50%, and you're learning this new skill together. And if this skill is something that you want to learn more deeply how to do, I encourage you to book a free consultation call with me for Heal Your Heart School. You can book in the link in the calendar below. In the meantime, here are some next step videos for you to watch so you can move one step closer to having a healthy and fulfilling relationship with yourself and others. And for now, I will see you in the next video.